This isn't a red flag video, and it's not just about spotting scams. If you're job hunting right now, my recommendation is simple. Use this checklist with every employer, not just the suspicious ones, because verification is also research. You wouldn't walk into an interview knowing nothing about the company, right? This is the same thing. If you only verify when you feel something's wrong, you're already reacting. This works against scams, and it also helps you decide whether an employer is worth your time. Now, what I'm introducing is called the offer stage checklist. The 5 rules applied in sequence. Before we break down the scam, we start with the defense. Because structure protects you before emotion takes over. The moment you receive a verbal offer, a written offer, a shortlisted confirmation, you run this checklist first. So, number one, pause for 24 hours, which is rule 5. In doubt, do nothing. This part is psychological. Emotion spikes at offer stage. You will receive hope, get relief, even validation, and then momentum because you want to get the job. You don't want to lose it. So escalation of commitment begins here. The 24-hour pause is not just symbolic. It disrupts momentum. By pausing 24 hours, scams do not survive stillness. Most scams survive acceleration. Scammers are not testing your intelligence, they're testing your urgency. In short, they win because you reacted too quickly because of emotion. Okay, number 2, verify the company independently. That is rule 4. Verify independently. Now we shift from psychology to structure. Don't verify through their email, not through their WhatsApp, not using numbers they provided. You source official contact details yourself. You create a separate line of verification. Because verification only works when it is truly separate. Okay? Now, number 3, verify the recruiter independently. Rule 4 again. Confirm that they actually work there. Do not rely on email signatures. Do not rely on LinkedIn messages. Again, separate lines of verification. Number 4, never, never pay to get paid. Rule number 1, scams follow patterns. Now we move to structural pattern recognition. In employment, money flows from employer to employee. Now we move to structural pattern recognition. In employment, money flows from employer to employee. Never the reverse. If reverse flow happens before employment activation, pause. That is a red flag. Number 5, do not send sensitive data before formal contract activation. This is rule 4 and 5. Now, this is about identity protection. Passport, identification card details, bank details, face verification. Verify before sending money or identity. Let me be clear. Proper companies may ask for basic identification like an ID number during early stages. That is normal. But full identity documents, bank details, and formal onboarding information are handled after structured employment processes are in place. If someone demands everything before that, that is not procedure. That is pressure and a red flag. And that is the checklist. Now, let's see why this checklist has to exist. We move from defense to understanding the threat. The structure, the scam structure we are defending against is because a scam sometimes looks organized. Doesn't mean it's safe. And just because it looks professional or feels professional doesn't mean it's legitimate. This is the advanced fee employment scam, modernized for remote work. This job scam variant exploded after COVID because remote hiring became normal. Digital interviews became normal. Cross-border recruitment became normal. And scammers adapted to the environment. Today, we are not just explaining this scam, we are dismantling it. And then we're going to test whether our defense survives it. Because if you wait until the payment stage of the scam, you're already emotionally compromised. The emotional compromise begins at the verbal offer. The moment you hear, congratulations, that's when logic weakens. Once you picture yourself in the role, you stop evaluating it objectively. So this defense activates at the offer stage, regardless of whether this is a real job offer or not at payment stage of the scam. How does it happen? Now we shift into the behavioral mechanics. You have been applying, sending CVs, getting ignored, some interviews, some rejections. Then someone reaches out, maybe a recruiter, and they offered you a remote role, offered you above market pay but realistic numbers. There were fast interview process, video calls, they use professional tone. Then, congratulations, you've been shortlisted. This is the emotional pivot. You've invested time, you may have told your family, you feel the momentum, and then comes the condition. Before onboarding, they require either licensing fee, training fee, equipment shipping, security deposit, visa processing, refundable onboarding charges, and they don't rush aggressively. They don't scream, last chance. This is not a panic scam. It begins by building trust. Professional tone, structured interviews, legitimate looking documents, but it locks you in through commitment. This is the shift. Trust first, commitment second. They rely on hope. They rely on sunk cost. They rely on authority imbalance. They are the hirer. You are the applicant. And you don't want to lose the opportunity. That's why you comply. And then they disappear. Why Rule 3 is not the heavy lifter here. Now we clarify rule hierarchy. Rule 3 is check before you click. This is powerful for phishing scams or QR scams. But it's weak here. Nothing obviously looks broken. The company may exist, the website may be real, the offer letter may look structured, because this is not a broken link scam. It begins with trust, but it traps true commitment, which is why Rule 5 activates first, then Rule 4, then Rule 1, not the other way around. Tactical versus structural. Now we separate tactics from structure. So tactics change, website improves, video interviews become realistic, emails look clean. That's tactical. That's why there are many variances of scams, because it's tactical. Structure does not change, because in employment, money flows from employer to employee. That is structural. We're not fighting tactics because tactics change constantly. We're defending structure because structure doesn't change easily. Now we're going to transition into stress testing, and we're going to stress test the checklist by deliberately applying pressure to it. In each scenario, we ask 3 questions. Here's the pressure, here's what we're measuring, and here's why the checklist survives. Stress test number 1. But the company exists. Here's the pressure. You check the company, it exists, the website is real, the job is even listed, nothing looks fake. Here's what we're measuring. We're not measuring existence. We're measuring authority. Does independent verification of the recruiter still function? Can we confirm this person actually works there? And here's why the checklist survives. Existence is not authority. You create a separate line of verification. You call the official number listed publicly, and you ask whether the recruiter works there. Impersonation cannot survive outbound confirmation. Scammers control inbound communication, which is to you. They cannot control independent verification, and the checklist survives. Stress test number 2. The email domain is correct. Here's the pressure. The recruiter emails you from a legitimate looking company domain. No spelling errors, no strange variation, looks clean. Here's what we're measuring. We are measuring whether domain authenticity alone is enough to override structural checks. Does the checklist depend on appearance or structure? And here's why the checklist survives. Even if a domain is real, the money flow rule still applies. No legitimate HR department collects onboarding fees via personal bank transfers, crypto, gift cards, e-wallet to individuals. Payment structure exposes fraud. The checklist survives because structure outweighs surface legitimacy. Stress test number 3. They say it's refundable. Here's the pressure. They claim the fee is refundable. Training deposit, security deposit, or even its government requirement. Sounds reasonable. And here's what we're measuring. We're measuring whether justification changes structure. Does refundable reverse the money flow rule? Does explanation override independent verification? And here's why the checklist survives. Refundable does not change direction. Money still flows from the candidate, from employer to employee after activation. If money is still flowing from candidate to employer before employment activation, you definitely need to ask for official written policy from the general HR mailbox, independently sourced. Means you go and email them and they send it to you. Because scammers avoid traceable documentation. The scam structure remains wrong. The checklist survives. Stress test number 4. They use a third-party HR partner. Here's the pressure. They say hiring is outsourced. It looks professional. You now have a real company, a real job, and a third-party HR firm. Everything seems layered and legitimate. And here's what we're measuring. We're measuring bilateral verification. Can both sides independently confirm the relationship? And here's why the checklist survives. You verify both sides independently, call the company. Do you use this HR partner? Call the HR partner. Are you contracted by this company? If either side cannot confirm, the scam structure collapses. Fraud cannot survive independent bilateral confirmation. The checklist survives. Stress test number 5. They have a real office address. Here's the pressure. Google Maps confirms the address. They conduct video calls. The environment looks real. Here's what we're measuring. We're measuring whether physical presence equals authority. Does realism override structural verification? And here's why the checklist survives. Video proves a person exists. It does not prove authority. Video is theater. Verification is substance. Apply rule number 1. Money flow direction remains unchanged. Structure still exposes fraud, and the checklist survives. Stress test number 6. They don't ask for money, they ask for documents. Here's the pressure. They request passport copy, IC copy, bank details, face verification. No money yet, it feels procedural. Here's what we're measuring. We're measuring identity protection. Does the absence of payment eliminate risk, or does Rule 4 still apply to sensitive data? And here's why the checklist survives. Because sensitive data is currency. Identity theft is monetizable. Verification must happen before sending money or identity. The rule expands, it does not collapse, and the checklist survives. Stress test number 7. They send you money first. Here's the pressure. They send you a check. They overpay. And they ask you to purchase equipment and return the excess. Now money flows to you first. It looks reversed. Here's what we are measuring. We are measuring whether apparent reversal of money flow neutralizes the rule. Is structure truly reversed? And here's why the checklist survives. Funds are not real until fully cleared and irreversible. Fake check scams rely on delayed banking reality. The structural rule still applies. Money ultimately flows out of the victim, and the checklist survives. Stress test number 8. They build a full fake ecosystem. Here's the pressure. Professional website, corporate email domain, offer letter, HR portal, interview panel, everything looks legitimate. And here's what we're measuring. We're measuring whether sophistication breaks independent verification. Does realism defeat the rule structure? And here's why the checklist survives. Scammers still control inbound communication, but they do not control independent outbound verification. They do not control corporate registries. They do not control domain age. They do not control historical digital footprint. Those leave evidence, and they do not control the structural rule. In employment, money flows from employer to employee. The checklist survives because it is based on structure, not appearance. Now, here's the honest part. Now we return to psychology, yeah? Because no system is perfect. Why? If someone is financially desperate, recently retrenched, under family pressure, emotionally invested, they may override logic because scams exploit emotion more than ignorance. And that is not stupidity. That is being human. And that is why pause comes first, then verification, not the other way around. If you take anything away from this video, let it be this checklist. Pause at the offer stage, verify independently, confirm the recruiter, never pay to get paid. Don't send sensitive data early, and you use it with every job offer. It protects you from scams, and it prepares you for real interviews. Verification isn't paranoia. It's professional, it's preparation. You do not need to have tech skills to keep safe. You just need good habits. Share this with the people you care about, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.